Welcome! What distinguishes people and professionals in the business worlds from others? Well, the use of a tool of universal application with a skill and intelligence which in general is poorly managed by most people, both in their professional lives and by professionals in the business world, particularly by information professionals who carry out their activities on both public and private television networks. In this intensive class, we will discuss how your communication both face-to-face and in public distinguishes you from others. What does the participant get out of this class? From what will he or she benefit? Well, in the development of knowledge, skills and training to raise its level of effectiveness, in its method of communicating both face-to-face and with required public speaking, and other circumstances. The participant will benefit from being able to handle the most sophisticated and effective communication techniques which have been tailored to our time and the needs of our coming decades in this digital age, in this 21st century, especially by improving communication face-to-face and public speaking communication. Selling ideas refers to the process of expressing and selling ideas. Additionally, to provide presentations and conduct goal-focused discipline meetings. Welcome, I'm David, consultant and manager of the firm García-Lomas and Allen-Perkins, the ADO Corporation. For more than 15 years and nearly 1,000 days, I've been developing commercial-oriented programs and Salesforce training in the development of leadership and management in all types of multinational organizations in the business world and all types of economic activity. We will develop this course through 10 important chapters. Chapter 1. How to use our voice and personal appearance. How do we say it the way it's saying? Chapter 2. The content. The what do we say. 3. The attention curve and public speaking. Chapter 4. Goals, qualities and guidelines for a good presentation, overcoming the scenic fear, the stage fright. Chapter 5. The information transmission questionnaire project. Chapter 6. Communication objectives, media and communication techniques. Chapter 7. The different types and purposes of communication. Chapter 8. The communication process and its 5 phases. 9. General rules of communication. Chapter 10. Obtaining information questionnaire project. Let's get started. Chapter 1. How to use our voice and personal appearance. How do we say it the way we say? With 2 aspects. A. How to use our voice with 10 points to be treated, and B. Our appearance with 3 points to deal with. And the question is, are you interested in knowing how do you communicate and public speaking distinguish you? Your way of speaking not only conveys our ideas, emotions, intents and desires, but it also, and maybe most importantly, sells us, ensuring that we are promptly seen as individuals and that our interlocutors are aware of the personal and expert quality which with we have addressed them. Inversely, even if you have extensive knowledge and preparation, you could communicate poorly with others due to fears and lack of confidence. Even if the information you intend to convey is significant, your manner of speaking could damage your reputation and cast a negative light on you. Your effective communication style, whenever it be face-to-face or in front of a group of people, distinguishes you from others and creates an impression of a person who is taller, more qualified, and of higher caliber. Additionally, you are building trust and conveying all of your categories. Chapter 1. How should we use our voice and personal appearance? 1. Correct breathing. Deep abdominal breathing. Yoga breathing involves deep belly breathing, taking air through the lungs from the bottom up, completing and emptying and filling our lungs. Additionally, adequate oxygenation of our bodies help us to manage our emotions and get over the stage fright. 2. Clarity in speech. We either talk or make noise. We speak or murmur. We must communicate clearly and fluently. Also avoid scratches, hesitating, repeating words, sounds, and crutches like I mean, well, then, anyway, what I mean, really, etc., etc. And sounds like all this interferes with our thoughts. We wouldn't be surprised if we stop, pause, and started analyzing how people speak. 3. Pronunciation, diction, articulation. If the articulation is poor, the interlocutor or audience does not understand and either does not listen or stop listening. We all have room for improvement here. Vocalization is the process of pronouncing all the words and phrases. Some people eat words. People who have lazy mouths do not move their lips. You must, for example, exercise your jaws. I. Communication has inherent problems that are difficult to avoid. We can avoid this type of vocalization, so whoever has it should correct it. 4. Variations in speed. It is the horizontal variation. People who speak slowly, people who speak quickly, and people who speak very quickly. If there is an imbalance between speaking slowly and speaking quickly, it is preferable to focus on speaking slowly rather than speaking quickly. We prevent good vocalization by speaking quickly, and the interlocutor has more difficulty interpreting the message. 5. Volume variation. It is a vertical variation. People who speak loudly with a high voice volume and people who speak softly with a low voice volume. But why? Why we recommend using a low voice? First, because the audience is more focused, and second, because the speed is reduced automatically. We must also seek a good balance here, because uniformity in our volume and speed of speech kills the audience attention and interest because it induces monotony. 6. Tone variation. The modulation of the voice with tone variations that are sometimes grave and sometimes acute breaks up the monotony of the emission, and the monotony in the expression kills the audience interest and attention. 7. Pauses. One of the most important tools we discuss is pauses. We always perceive the pauses to be much longer than they are. The time between words or phrases used to emphasize words and ideas is equal to a pause. What causes rhythm? Pauses. Even though they are used, pauses are extremely effective and necessary, always after a question to get an answer, especially if the question is rhetorical and does not necessitate an answer, because one answers ourselves after a good pause. Always after an important message for message assimilation. Always at the start of a new chapter, such as a wake-up call. And you must vary pauses because they create the rhythm and are underutilized techniques in conversation and in life. 8. Intensity. It is the right combination of volume and speed. We begin to have the correct intensity when we can use our voice at the proper volume and speed. Intensity is a third dimension that results from proper combination of the volume and speed. In the expression, it can be expressed as the degree of energy. It is the behemoth of the voice, which is determined by the amplitude of the sound waves. 9. Phrases and emphasis. We are talking about the content and structure of the sentences. We should not use phrases that are so long that they leave us gasping for air. We also refer to how each person speaks and where he emphasizes the phrases. In a good presentation, you can tell what the speaker's goal is by the emphasis. The set of tone, volume, and facial expression used to emphasize an important point is known as emphasis. We emphasize words or phrases with emphasis. 10. Feeling and empathy. We must accomplish this by emphasizing with our interlocutor group or auditorium and believing that we are talking to the group and they feel what we are feeling. Remember that our soul has three parts: thinking, feeling, and willing. As a result, when we communicate, we not only transmit rational and intellectual aspects of the thinking, but also emotions and feelings which have a powerful impact on the audience. The personal appearance. 1. Eye contact. It is the most important point we discuss because we communicate with our interlocutor or with the group throughout our eye contact. Eye contact conveys trust. We may lose eye contact if we read our script too much. We can receive feedback from the interlocutor or group through our eye contact, which is retroinformation, and thus study their reactions. Our attention must be distributed through the group by making eye contact with everyone in the group and looking kindly into the eyes of our interlocutors. Remember that the eyes are a language that communicates confidence and secrets. Smiling is a crucial point. In our communication, it transmits heat. 2. Gestures and movements, posture, courage. The gestures must match what we are saying, and we must be extremely cautious with our movements. Latinos tend to gesticulate, make a lot of gestures. If we are speaking in front of a group and our hands are bothering us, we can hold a pen at first but quickly remove it because the goal is to have our hands free. Let us use our arms, hands to communicate our thoughts, feelings, and desires. Remember the value of mimicry when communicating. In our walk, the courage, take care of our hands, finger, fist, face, smile, and posture. 3. Know how to listen. Listen to the other person with a positive attitude. Examine what you are hearing from them. Make a focused expression. Look after our non-verbal communication, our body language. Listen with your gestures and your entire body. To actively listen, you must do the following. Make eye contact, make passing head movements, and use appropriate recognition sounds like aha, aha, with words like as I understand it, yes, and so on. I ask questions about the case, and not interrupting, respecting what is said, and listening calmly when our interlocutor is violent. To get to know someone well, you must listen to him and thus extract all his thoughts and feelings. Rules and proverbs. The 20-80 rule, the Pareto law between speaking and listening. We have 2 ears and 1 tongue to be able to hear more and speak less. Diogenes. Voltaire said, judge a man by his questions rather than by his answers. Wisdom comes from listening and repentance from speaking. Italian proverb. Also, people are slaves to their words and masters of their silence. And Oscar Wilde said, it is better to be quiet and look silly than open your mouth and dispel all doubts. Chapter 2. The content. What do we say? With 3 important aspects to consider. A. The opening, our beginning. B. The topic we are dealing with. And C. The close, our end. A. The opening, our beginning. Were our presentation objectives clearly defined? Did you make an impact, drew people attention? be the topic we are dealing with. The structure. Did you stick to the topic? Were the stages presented in chronological order? Was there proper spinning through the topic presentation, the red line? The exhibition, the presentation. How was your verbal fluency and your ability to find and use words and phrases to communicate? Are the main points of the speech highlighted? Was the topic presented consciously and accurately? Was the information technically correct? Do I met my objectives? Was the entire report content required? Visual aids. Did you use appropriate aids? Did you use them properly? Did you use your personality as a visual aid? Contact with the group. Did you maintain a good communication with the group? Was it always discernible? Did you refrain from using criticism or sarcasm? Was the group actively involved in the report's creation? C. The close, our end. Was a summary made? Did the summary cover all the key points? Do I spend enough time on the summary? Was the follow-up clearly defined? Chapter 3. The attention curve and public speaking. As we see in our scheme, within the coordinate axis we place in the vertical axis called orders the attention paid to us by an interlocutor or a group of people to whom we speak, while in the horizontal axis called abscissa we place the time factor. As a result, when we begin our presentation, we must ensure that the interlocutors or group attention grows as the time of our exhibition passes, forming a curve known as the curve of attention, which will reach a maximum point after a certain time, and after which attention decays and collapses. As a result, we only have a limited amount of time to capture the group's attention and keep it in crescendo before the group's attention collapses and they stop fully attending us. We are not discovering anything new, because how many of us have realized while talking to someone that by their absent gaze or irrelevant responses, we realize that that person has already lost attention and it's being showered with my words, but my message no longer penetrates them. This will indicate that for whatever reason, the attention curve has declined to a point where they no longer listen to me. And the question is how to achieve a good development of our attention curve. First, good content is to say what do we say, and secondly, with a good way to say. How do we say it? When content and form are properly integrated, we will achieve the result of a magnificent attention curve that marches in crescendo, with which we will ensure that the interlocutor's attention, whenever a person or an audience, is maintained in time, so that they can capture the message that I am sending them, and hopefully with all that attention that I am putting in exposing. The oral expression, public speaking techniques are critical to developing a good attention curve. Chapter 4. Goals, Qualities and Guidelines for a Good Presentation. Overcoming the stage fright. The objectives pursued by oratory: transmit, communicate, create interest in the group by being accepted by it, break the psychological barrier that exists between the group and the speaker, make them feel what I feel. That's why we have certain similarities with an actor. We play a role. Features for a good presentation. A good presentation, a good performance in front of a group is not the goal. Good performance should not distract visitors from the exhibition's content. Don't put on a show. A good presentation should be tailored to the group. Interaction between the speaker and the audience is required. Do not talk to the group, but with the group is the golden rule. Rules for a good presentation. Make every effort so that the group wants to listen to you and trust you. Speak naturally and spontaneously. Be yourself. Commit to what you are saying. Don't hesitate. Don't be too eclectic. Be careful not to pontificate or dogmatize. Never show a lack of interest in what you are saying. How to overcome the state of nerves, tension, and fear in front of the group or in front of our interlocutor. The stage fright. It is quite common for you to feel tension, nervousness, prevention, or fear in front of the group at the beginning of your speech. It is a natural feeling since we don't know who we are talking to. We do not know what the reaction of the group will be when the first objection will come or what it will be. In addition, the group study us. We are going to give some general rules to overcome the stage fright. 1. The group does not notice more than 10% of the possible nervousness you have. 2. You don't have to avoid it. You have to control it. In the short term, what to do? Deep abdominal breathing, yogic breathing. At first, look at people who look warm and friendly. Not looking at unpleasant faces at first make us nervous. If our mouth is dry, have a glass of water on hand. Write the first sentence with which we are going to start the speech. Take suitable pauses and take advantage of them from deep abdominal breathing. If there are problems with your hands, use a pen at first, but leave it promptly. Deep abdominal breathing, yogic breathing. We have referring to how to achieve greater self-control through yogic breathing. It has been proven that a great good degree of oxygenation of our body leads to a greater control of our emotional state. In that sense, deep yogic breathing helps us to overcome the stage fright, which is often presented to us in difficult situations of great commitment, especially when we have to speak in public. Therefore, yogic breathing begins first by expelling air from our lungs through the nose, trying to get the fullest possible emptying of the air we have in our lungs. And in the long term, what to do? Prepare your presentation as well as you can. Good knowledge of the subject, training with watch and video. And remember, nothing replaces a deep preparation. Chapter 5. The Transmission of Information Questionnaire Project. Who doesn't know the history of the sinking of the Titanic? It is a good example of what happens when the transmission of information fails. When talking about communication, I always remember that famous and authentic expression that communication is full of traps and that failures in our communication continually occurs. We discussed that communication is which is so important in the business world. When I teach communication in my courses and seminars, I usually begin by recounting a significant journey that will connect two cities on two continents. One in old Europe, the city of London, and the other on the east coast of the United States of America, New York City. We are at the beginning of the last century, the beginning of the 20th century, and since at that time aviation had not yet developed as it is today, the trip we told was going to take place in an impressive ship. It was the inaugural journey of that huge ship, proud of the technology and intelligence of that time, to the point that the ship manufacturers had inscribed a slogan on the hull of the ship which said, "Not even God can sink the Titanic." Telegraph messages from important people on both continents continued to arrive at the Titanic, to the point where the radiotelegraph was overwhelmed and the messages were piling up. thinking that later, perhaps at night, he would be able to read them, classify them, and deliver them to their respective recipients in the various cabins. Another ship in the area, the Caledonian, which was heading in the opposite direction as the Titanic, had managed to leave a dangerous area in the North Atlantic because it had had to overcome a lot of very dangerous icebergs. After all, they move by sea currents and winds during the winter, and also in that area from which the Caledonian has just left. When the Caledonia learns that the Titanic, with its enormous mass and large draft, is approaching that dangerous area infested with icebergs, it sends a telegram warning the Titanic of the danger and advising it to divert its course. What exactly does the Titanic? Nothing. The telegram that arrives is added to the pile of telegrams awaiting reading and classification by the Titanic telegrapher, who also makes a mistake because he believes it will be another congratulation message to some of the couples aboard of the Titanic, and he believes it is not urgent. The Titanic continues to advance in the North Atlantic, passing by a massive iceberg that appears in the mist, causing a major rupture below the waterline, and the water starts to permeate the Titanic. The orchestra continue to play on the first-class deck, and the elegant couples continue to dance, unaware of the significance of the iceberg situation. However, the professional captain detects the impact and immediately dispatches one of his officers to report possible damage. The officer returns with a pale lime-colored face, terrified. My captain, it is incredible, but we are doomed to sink," he says to his captain. The captain and a few other people aboard were unaware that, as it's often the case for political reasons, the Titanic had set sail on its maiden voyage unfinished. But there were unavoidable commitments to fulfill, and on higher orders the Titanic set sail on its maiden voyage without the large panels that made the Titanic large compartments watertight. This meant that when water entered on the compartments, it could jump through communicating vessels and after one of another eventually sinking the Titanic. Knowing all of this, the captain orders another of his officers to immediately throw a distress signal, because where they are sailing in a commercial area of the North Atlantic, some ships of the area will receive and come to our aid. The distress signal is sent, but the Titanic was so advanced that instead of the well-known SOS, it sends a new signal that was just starting to be used in international navigation at that time. Mayday, Mayday. The Caledonian, along with other ships in the area, receives the signal Mayday, Mayday, but is unable to interpret it because they are unfamiliar with the new international aid sign. As a result, the Caledonian captain continued his journey without answering the call, believing that if the Titanic message was important, it would have been sent more clearly. The Titanic begins to sink, causing panic on aboard. Since it getting dark in the North Atlantic, the captain orders another officer to launch the luminous rescue rockets, which will be easily seen by ships in the area, who will undoubtedly come to our aid. When the all-nervous officer sees the rockets of various colors, he goes and turns them on as he picks them up, not realizing that it is only the white rockets that indicate the need for assistance, and luminaries of various colors that illuminate the North Atlantic sky come out. They see in the distance a great color of rockets that appear to be launching from the Titanic, but the captain of the Caledonian makes a false assumption. He thinks, what a party they are having on the Titanic that even fireworks are lighting. So the Caledonian continues its course without realizing that the Titanic distress situation. The confusion is already complete on the Titanic, as the furniture moves, overwhelming people due to the inclination of the boat as it sinks, and men disguised as women assault the lifeboats to the cry of "women and children first." By the way, there were not enough lifeboats to evacuate the entire ticket, because it was not mandatory at the time. If it had been made mandatory after the Titanic disaster, the boats would have had enough boats to evacuate the entire ticket. In a nutshell, the Titanic sank, killing more than 1,500 people. And now, with the benefit of history perspective, we can say that the Titanic sank and so many people died because of communication consistently, repeatedly failed. As a result, when we talk about communication, we are not talking about something banal or trivial, but about something truly transcendental, which is true also in our business world. The issue is far more serious than it appears. Consider the simple task that we assign to our young children. On many occasions, they misinterpret us. Now I propose an intriguing questionnaire on information transmission. We will submit 10 statements that can be answered as correct if what I say appears to be correct, or incorrect if what I say appears incorrect to me. After each point, I will leave a brief period of each for you to consider what we are saying is correct or incorrect, and then I will provide the correct answer. 1. Improvisation sounds better than a deep preparation. Wrong. Improvisation is the dynamic of oratory, but nothing replaces a deep preparation. Therefore, the more preparation and less improvisation, the better. 2. A brief and fast way of our communication is really important. Incorrect. Being understood, being accepted, producing action, and understanding others are important because they are the objectives of communication. Better yet if you are also brief and quick. 3. Interruptions by participants must be avoided before the briefing presentation is completed. Incorrect. On the contrary, since it is an informative meeting, the goal is for the information to arrive. That is why I will encourage participants to interrupt me when something is not clear enough, and we will gradually clarify things on the fly. The final plea and questions are standard, but not the best. 4. Even if the preparation is poor, it is preferable to speak without notes. Incorrect. It is preferable to have the necessary support to ensure that I effectively communicate what I want to communicate. As a result, I will have the support, and I will use or not use them according to my convenience. 5. That the collaborators remember what has been communicated to them is the main objective of their speaker. Incorrect. The most important thing is that they do it if they just remember it and do not do anything bad. The company is a hive of activity. The company is a world of action. 6. Audiovisual aids can easily take on an artificial character and are insufficient, especially when speaking to a small group. Incorrect. An audiovisual aid can be a pencil and paper, and I put the audio and the group can be as small as a single person in front of you. 7. For their better understanding, attendees will receive in writing at the beginning of the meeting the content of the information to be transmitted. Incorrect. We talk about the content, and with it we kill the motivation to be treated correctly. In any case, in the end, and without saying in advance, we can deliver the content of the information to ensure that they receive it in full. 8. A little tension at the start of the speech will help your presentation. Correct. The word tension may be incorrect, but what we mean is that we must be awake and alert with all 5 senses, both at the start and throughout the presentation, with a certain controlled tension. If I am to relax, I will make mistakes. 9. When given information, it is necessary to take into account those who listen to us. And this is correct. You always have to adapt to the auditorium, to the client. 10. The preparation time must coincide with the presentation time. And this is incorrect. Depending on the speaker's experience, the relationship between preparation and presentation is usually 1 to 10. Nothing replaces a deep preparation, I insist. This questionnaire is interesting, isn't it? We have made a lot of points. Okay. Chapter 6. Communication, Objectives, Media and Communication Techniques. What is communication? Transmitting a message and obtaining a discriminated response that is specific to the message we are transmitting. The transmission of ideas to others who comprehend the ideas and act accordingly. On a personal level and as leaders, how do we communicate? There are 4 elements in communication. 1. The idea to be transmitted. Then the transmission, the exact capture, and 4. The right reaction. Now let's talk about the communication objectives. There are also 4. 1. To be understood. 2. To be accepted. 3. Produce action. And 4. Understand others, because communication must be a two-way. There are 2 key figures in every communication, the transmitter and the receiver. And we must be good transmitters and receivers, which requires us to cultivate empathy from others. The leader develops verbal fluency, the ability to find words and phrases and use them to communicate. Also, the logical ability, the ability to relate concepts and draw conclusions. This logical ability is related to the memory factor. And the verbal comprehension skills, ability to understand words and phrases. And what media do human beings use? Well, there are 5 that match the 5 senses: touch, sight, hearing, smell, and taste. Although normally in our communications, we mainly develop audiovisuals, that is, we use the 2 fundamental senses of sight, image, and hearing, sound, the word. Communication technique. We will describe the communication techniques as follows. The following is a simple model. There is always a transmitter and receiver in all communications, and between a channel is often a word, an image, or any of our other senses. Everything starts with the transmitter, intending to communicate something, and that intention is encoded and a message is constructed, and that message is placed in the channel, for example, the word. And by placing the message in the channel, there will be what we call disturbances and interferences that alter the message. The message reaches the receiver already affected by disturbances and interferences, and hopefully the desired reaction occurs in the receiver, indicating that our communication was successful. Disturb. Prevent the order of the speech you are discussing. Discomfort, interruption, and disorder. Fatigue is defined as a physiological disturbance. Interference. Enter signal reception. Something unfamiliar to both the transmitter and the receiver. External noises include ambient noises that make communication difficult, as well as people arriving and interfering. Chapter 7. Different types and purposes of communication. The question is, why do we communicate with others? That is, what are our intentions, objectives, and end goals when we communicate with others? We'll respond with 2 questions. The first question, what are the various types of communication situations that we encounter in our personal and professional lives? And second, for what purpose do we communicate? My communication objectives. When asked What are the different types of communication situations? We respond with the scheme that we show, which tell us that there are three types of communication. 1. Face-to-face communication with other interlocutor in both directions, from my person to the other person. 2. Communication of my person with the group to a major or minor group in both directions as indicated in the outline. And 3. Communication with a larger or smaller group, both but only in one sense, from myself to the group but without the group being able to communicate with me, without retroinformation, without feedback. According to the scheme, there are three types of communication situations. Now comes the second question, which I also ask the groups I train, but this time I'm trying to get the group to answer the question. What are our communication's various goals, objectives, and intentions? To put it in another way, why do we communicate? And then, during a bus session, the group suggests a slew of objectives for which we will communicate, such as to get to know each other, to exchange ideas, to express my thoughts, to understand the other person's emotions, to sell concepts, ideas, and a lot more. After noting all the group's ideas on a flip chart, I turn and address the group, indicating that all the ideas that you have taken out in that bad session, and many more, can be summarized in 6 objectives and intentions of communication, which can be summarized in a broad sense in 1. Provide information, 2. Gather information, 3. Motivate and stimulate, 4. Correct and criticize, 5. Handling complaints, 6. Solve problems. Now I integrate the first and second question that I initially did to the group, presenting them in a new scheme. Whenever I direct a communication professional training and have been developing commercial orientation programs, Salesforce training, leadership development, and management for more than 10 years and approximately 800 days, the groups have never been able to get out of that 6 purposes, communication objectives. The outline contains the 2 preliminary questions on which we will now collaborate with the group. Based on this comprehensive scheme, in which we integrate the various types of situations of communication, as well as the various purposes, objectives, and intentions of communication, I ask the group. We can do the following with this first type of face-to-face person communication. 1. Provide details? And the simple answer is yes, that I cross out on the flip chart in the scheme. 2. And can I get information with that type of communication? And the answer is also yes, which I cross out. 3. I can get motivated, stimulated? And the answer is yes, which I indicate in the scheme. 4. As well as correcting and criticizing, I'll get it? And the answer is, of course, yes. 5. And deal with complaints? Yes, the answer is yes. 6. And solve problems? And the answer is also yes, as I indicate in the scheme. Now, when we speak to the group, we say that it is a good type of communication because it addresses each individual person to person in both directions, and it covers all the different purposes, objectives, and intentions of communication. But now we'll look at the second type of communication in our scheme, which is the communication from a person to a group, with communication in both directions. And we ask the group once more, can we do the following with this second type of communication? 1. Give information? And the quick answer is yes, that I mark with a cross in the scheme. 2. And with that type of communication, can I get the information? And the answer is also yes, and I mark with a cross. 3. Unmotivate, stimulate, can I get it? And the answer is also yes from the group. But now I mark with traces in the scheme and I turn to the group and tell them, what motivates one person can make another cold, and what is important as motivation for one person may be of very little value to another. As a result, motivating a group is difficult. Furthermore, when it comes to manifesting our motivations, humans are very cautious and modest because we are discovering something truly intimate about each of ourselves, while also delivering weapons to others so that they can manipulate us. The only way to motivate a group is to appeal to primary motivations, because anyone who does not catch him for one motivation can be taken for another. That is, watering the group with various primary motivations. 4. But let's get back to our workout, and we can correct, criticize, and the answer now, despite the group's reservations, is yes. And I tell them, making on the flip chart with traces in a column to correct and criticize, yes, but with reservations, given that the universal rule is criticizing privately and praise publicly. 5. Finally, let's look to the fifth situation, dealing with complaints. We can accomplish this through this type of communication, and the answer is, of course, yes. And there I made a full cross. 6. And finally, can we solve problems? And the answer is yes, and I mark a complete cross in the scheme. And I'd like to remind you of the group problem solving system that is extremely efficient and motivating for both people and the company. Work teams, quality circles are used to solve group problems. Let us now consider the third type of communication situation. Communication in front of a larger or smaller group, but only in one way, in one direction, from myself to the group, but without the group being able to communicate with me, that is, without retroinformation, without feedback. And we ask the group once more, with this third type of communication, can we, one, give information? And the answer is, of course, yes. And I mark the scheme with traces, and I tell them, yes, I can provide information. However, because there are no feedback, I will be unable to determine how the information I transmit to you is reaching you, whenever it is correct, and to whom, or, if done correctly, to whom. All of this emphasizes the significance of information feedback. 2. And with this type of communication, can I get information? And the answer is no, since there is no feedback, and I leave the box blank. 3. Motivate, stimulate, can I get it? And the hesitant answer is yes from the group. But I now mark traces in the scheme, and I turn to the group and tell them, it was already difficult to motivate the group when there was double communication. Now it is much more difficult for me because there is no feedback. As a result, in the box I frame a spiral with strokes. 4. Uncorrect, criticize, can we get it? And the answer now, with certain doubts from the group, is yes. And I again mark a spiral with strokes, since if there were already problems even having feedback, now that we don't have it, the problem is greater. 5. And let's go with the fifth situation of dealing with complaints. Can we do it with this type of communication? And the answer is clearly no, since we can't receive any communication. And there I leave the box blank. Sometimes it may be that this type of communication to the group is raised in one direction, precisely so as not to receive any feedback. 6. And finally, can we solve problems? And the answer is no, and I leave the box blank in the outline of the flip chart that I am using. For all of these reasons, This class emphasized the critical importance of receiving positive feedback in any communication situation. People and professionals have an extraordinarily powerful yet well-managed tool for this, the questioning techniques as previously mentioned. Chapter 8. The communication process and its 5 phases. It takes place through 5 stages. 1. The formation of the message. Here the trap is in the language, in the choice of words. 2. The transmission of the message. The traps here are in the way we communicate, oral expression techniques, and public speaking. 3. The reception of the message. Traps appear in the form of disturbances and interferences with communications by the receiver. 4. Interpretation of the message. How do we interpret our impressions? Under the influence of one or more aspects such as our standards, our expectations, our emotions, and our experiences. 5. Storage or memorization of the message. Human beings have 3 types of memory. Visual, we remember what has been photographed with our eyes. Here, we remember what we have heard. And motor, we remember what we have learned to do with our hands, with our bodies. Chapter 9. General rules of communication. Let's talk about the general rules of communication to always keep in mind in our actions. 1. Plan what you want to say. That is, before opening your mouth, think carefully about what you are going to say. 2. Reduce the message to a minimum for ease of understanding. 3. Remove all external discomfort. We mean deciding where and when will this happen to avoid interferences and disturbances. 4. Useful vocabulary. To put it in another way, in our interlocutor's language. Speak at the same level to ensure greater comprehension. 5. A stream communicates with the most channels possible. Use the 5 senses. 6. Vary channels for better communication and maintain the interest of the audience, the interlocutor, and the customer. 7. Simple communication. Use keys. Keep it sweet and simple. 8. Use your voice. Confidential, suggestive, dramatic. We don't usually extract the full range of possibilities from the human voice. Use the information learned in oral expression techniques and public speaking. 9. Be aware of the environment, attention, attitudes, etc. 10. Accompany yourself with gestures. Use your non-verbal communication, the body language. 11. Get feedback through questions. 12. Make summaries to maintain a junction line, a red line. 13. Listen. Know how to listen. 14. Be aware that poor communication is the result of bad transmitter. When the audience, the customer, does not understand, it is usually the fault of the transmitter, of the seller. 15. Try to be good transmitters and receivers. Now we will do another self-analysis, if you will, using the system of 1 to 5 points with a demanding high average of 3.5 points, giving me a maximum of 52.5 points. If you wish, you can pause the video for a moment to assess yourself. How was your self-assessment? Don't worry, everyone, and I the first, have a place for improvement. Tell me and I forget. Teach me and I remember. Involve me and I learned. Benjamin Franklin. Chapter 10. Obtaining Information Questionnaire Project. We have already mentioned that human-to-human communication is fraught with pitfalls. As a result, we should never assume that we are being correctly interpreted or that we are correctly interpreting what others say to us. In this class, we continue to develop the key aspects of something so important in the business world, such as communication in obtaining information. We have done a questionnaire on the transmission of information. Now we are going to address another interesting questionnaire on obtaining information. To accomplish this, we will present 10 statements that can be answered with correct or incorrect. 1. It is usually our fault when we do not understand our interlocutor. Incorrect. If the communication fails, look for the culprit on the side of the transmitter, where the communication begins. 2. It is not difficult for an experienced person to distinguish between facts and assumptions. Incorrect. Even with experience, we may be unable to determine whenever the situation presented to us is true or corresponds to a well-established assumption. Remember that some people share their approaches very well based on their interests. 3. If we doubt what our collaborator has asked us, we will respond with another question. Correct. We will ask you to clarify your question. For when we bombard people with questions, they feel attacked. Incorrect. Here's a small trap. Not necessarily if we are able to efficiently justify why we are asking him. The rule is that there must be something to justify before asking. 5. Because sales professionals typically enjoy talking, they will always be willing to provide information. Incorrect. It is one thing to be communicative and quite another to know what information to give and which to withhold. 6. The rhetorical question goal is to elicit information from the silent collaborator. Incorrect. After a good pause, the rhetorical question will be answered the same way he asked it, to make the auditorium or client think and create attention and expectation. 7. Below is a question about influence. What are your thoughts on this price of this product? Incorrect, because we don't know what the price is. Whenever good or bad, the question is neutral and unimportant. 8. When we ask with sincerity, we get sincere answers. Incorrect. No, not always. We are not jet angels. 9. A person's reaction is usually influenced by his circumstances and desires. Correct. That's correct. 10. There is something to justify before asking. Correct. We have already mentioned it. You are curious about this questionnaire, right? It is interesting, right? We have covered all of our bases? Okay. In the future, we will continue to expand and deepen the development of these universally relevant topics, both for our personal and professional lives. Please share and publish your responses and thoughts in this project so that others who want to learn more about this topic can benefit. If you have any doubts or questions about it, please let me know in the project discussion section. By going to the class discussion tab and clicking the discussion tab, you can create a publication, a project. Publish your projects as well as any questions or comments on the project page. Until the next time, greetings.